There's a final command that I want to show you here called resizing your canvas. So in other words, we're not going to be resizing your image. We're going to be resizing imagine the piece of paper that you can work inside Photoshop. In other words, the workable space inside your document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on my gray background to go and open up another project file here. You can really use any file that you want. It doesn't really matter a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to grab barn1detail.jpg. Go ahead and pop that guy open. As I say, I'm not referring to resizing the actual image, making the pixels in the image larger or making the physical size of the image larger. What I'm talking about is increasing my workable space. Maybe I want to put some text across the top of the image, or maybe I want to put some additional content across the bottom without actually changing the size of my photo, right? So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to head up to my image menu and then down to a command called canvas size. And there's your keyboard shortcut, by the way, Command Option C or Control Alt C if you're working on the Windows side. Okay, now inside this dialog box, what we see at the top here is the original dimensions or the current dimensions for the image. And as you can see, this particular image is quite huge, 35.5 inches by 26.5 inches. And in the area beneath that, I can go and set the new size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to crank up the width of this to a ridiculous 40 inches, and I'll increase the height to 30 inches. How's that? Of course, I can come to these drop-down menus and change my unit of measurement if I want. And then finally, beneath that, I have my anchor area. Now imagine inside this little gray box here in the center, imagine that's where our two barn windows reside. As a matter of fact, it would be really helpful to have a tiny thumbnail graphic of our photo, because this is sort of our current photo as it currently exists, right? Let's say, for example, this extra space that I'm adding to my image, let's say, for example, I want to add that above my barn windows and also to the left of my barn windows. So then all I need to do is make sure I have my anchor positioned in the correct quadrant. So I'm just going to make sure that my anchor point is down in the bottom right corner. So in other words, I'm adding height onto the top and I'm adding width onto the left. Does that make sense? Or perhaps I could go to the top left corner, which would mean I'm adding width onto the right side of my image and below my image, right? So I hope that makes sense. It really is entirely up to you where you want to add on your extra space. But as I say, I want to add on my extra space above and to the left. So I'm going to make sure I'm down in the bottom right quadrant. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And that's all there is to it. Now what I get inside this new area is simply white, which I could then go and fill in, or I could add more photos to, or add more text to. So there you go, a neat little trick that you can use inside Photoshop, resizing your canvas.